Warning, this is a disclaimer that this is a critique and review of Chapter 2 of The Frontier. If you're worried about spoilers and want to see the critique from the beginning, here's a link for Chapter 1 so you don't jump into gameplay or get confused on what is going on in the overall plot of The Frontier. After the tragic Wolfpack's Last Stand mission to rescue Courier 6, we begin Chapter 2 waking up to Dr. Lang wheeling us on a gurney to the ICU in critical condition.
Make room for this one. Blackthorn says he's top priority.
Lang shouts to fellow nurses that our recovery is priority 1, an order given to the hospital by General Blackthorn. We get the cliche,
"We're losing him! Defibrillators now!"
lines from Lang, and some high-pitched noises to emulate the sound of being zapped by defibrillators. Lang demands blood packs, and in the background you see a wounded NCR trooper being operated upon.
I guess you could say I took after my father.
Lang orders Siren, a medic, to grab a blood pack from the other patient. A nurse objects, saying,
"What are you doing? He needs that."
Siren responds,
I'm sorry. Another patient requires this blood pack.
The nurse retorts with,
"What? What about him?
Not me?
You're just going to let him die?"
Yes.
to which Siren replies with the somber line,
Sorry. I'm just following orders.
Some NCR troopers are getting upset with Blackthorn's orders, with one yelling,
"This is madness! All of these soldiers are gonna die for this one person!" Screw Blackthorn's orders.
Lang replies to them that all
resources must go to the courier. Blackthorn's orders. Don't have enough supplies to treat everyone else.
Lang orders the MPs to escort the angry troopers out of the ICU and proceeds with operating on the courier.
I'm the Ubermensch. I need all the blood pack.
Now, I have some issues with this Grey's Anatomy sequence. Why does the NCR seem to have one doctor per shift? Where are all the NCR exiles' medical supplies? In a later sequence, you help another surgeon who is surprisingly effective at his work, but I feel like the lack of medical staff is just more mismanagement of resources by Blackthorn, or whoever it is that recruits staff in the NCR exiles. Or the scene is written in a way that makes you ask yourself, how does the Frontier NCR have so many soldiers but seemingly a singular surgeon on duty at all times?
Intelligence? Are you a good medic?
Siren just kind of sits there and walks into your gurney. Why can't she operate on the other soldiers while Lang patches me up? I don't know much about blood infusions, but from what little I do know, I think getting the wrong blood type for an infusion causes an inflammatory immune response in your body, which could potentially kill you. So what's the probability the trooper on the operating table has the same blood type as the courier? We don't really see what's happening on the operating table, so it's up for debate what kind of operation is being done on your body, but I feel like this particular scene could be rewritten in a way that didn't require blood packs to be used. Maybe an oxygen tank, an object that provides something that all humans need? You don't see them too often in the Mojave, so that would explain the rarity of the resource. I'm pretty sure I had about 14 blood packs, some doctor's bags, and over 100 stim packs in my inventory that was confiscated prior to the operation, so medical supplies being a factor in the situation would have been a non-issue had they sorted through my loot. Maybe Dr. Lang is an armchair doctor with low skill points put into medicine. It's hard to say. I feel like the scene needs a rewrite. However, I don't think it's explained at any point why the courier is so essential to the NCR questline. In the main storyline of New Vegas, the courier's role is central to the outcome of the Mojave because of the presence of the platinum chip. Once you retrieve the platinum chip from Benny or the bunker in Legion hands, it is really up to you what happens to the people of New Vegas, because the platinum chip is the key to diverting power from Hoover Dam to whichever faction or group of factions the courier decides is the right choice. Kaisar is sick and is preoccupied with tribes and fighting the NCR. House is a body in a vat and has no real way to travel the Mojave using his Securitrons. And Kimball is, well, an oblivious bureaucrat with no real understanding of pre-war technology, so it makes sense that the courier is the only one with the knowledge and ability to travel the wastes to make his choice on how to use the platinum chip. So again, I have to ask the question, why is the courier so important? Because he has high speech and melee weapons skills? I think this is again a fault of the developer's writing team to explain why the main character is so necessary. He has no innate superpowers, the Pip-Boy on his wrist isn't exclusive to people in the Mojave, as Doc Mitchell is the one to give it to you in the beginning of the main game. So is Blackthorn just making poor executive decisions to endanger his troops to make use of the courier just because of tales he heard of Courier 6's exploits in the wastes? The writing in the Frontier has a weird, almost passive-aggressive conundrum where it acknowledges plot holes and questions you might have, but never answers them in a satisfactory way. I think the method in which this mod script was written is most likely a general bullet point list of plot elements that sound good at first, but when implementing them in-game, the railroad has already been built, so the moral questions and choices of characters come later. But I digress. I don't want to pick apart every plot hole and bring too much negativity into this critique. But to be fair, this scene needs revisions, and once these changes are made, the developers can utilize the events in the sequence and maintain being effective in progressing the plot. After a successful operation, Blackthorn arrives to the ICU asking how the courier is doing, with Lang replying that the courier is in stable condition. Blackthorn says this is good news and asks if there were troopers giving Lang trouble. Lang replies with,
"Nothing the MPs couldn't take care of."
Blackthorn acknowledges that morale is
I
low,
understand morale is low,
but he needs to proceed with his plan, so these decisions were just sacrifices that had to be made. Lang presents some qualms with Blackthorn's decision-making, explaining that almost all the medical supplies were used, and many other patients died in diverting all resources to operate on the courier. Rancor appears to be in the room somewhere, and Rancor agrees with Lang and says that the exiles have sacrificed more than what any one person is worth,
Blackthorn, we don't even know anything about this courier.
and points out the fact that the NCR doesn't know much about the courier.
I'm sure if we give him the chance, he'll prove to be our most valuable asset.
Generic, we all have to make sacrifices, and the courier is the one who can make a difference. Dialogue.
You better hope so. And soon. If morale gets any lower, expect a mutiny on your hands.
Rancor warns Blackthorn he might have a mutiny on his hands. Lang explains to Blackthorn the courier will need a couple days to recover.
How much longer would you say until the courier can return to duty?
At least another couple days or so.
Duty.
Depends on how
He
well
said
some of
duty.
the
At which point he
heal
can
up.
return to duty.
Notify me as soon as he's ready.
Yes,
The
sir.
scene then fades to black, and once you return to consciousness, you and Lang have a scene that's reminiscent of the Doc Mitchell intro sequence from New Vegas, even with lines like,
Easy there. Take it slowly.
Whoa, easy there, easy. Take it slow now. It ain't a race.
this is a nice touch by the devs, bringing you into something familiar for some New Vegas nostalgia. You can respond ungratefully and say,
I feel like shit.
When you were first brought in here, you were nearly dead.
Lang recites the medical report and says that you
Died several times on the operating table. Both your arms and legs were broken by what appeared to be blunt force trauma. You suffered a skull fracture.
Very clever. Edmund, the hammer, please.
obviously from Legate Valerius's interrogation.
Punctured lung, some fire abrasions.
Most likely from the crucifixion, from being tortured by legionnaires.
Legion weren't going easy on you.
This would explain the need for a blood pack or two, so I guess this clears up some plot holes presented earlier. However, I still stand by my argument that this entire sequence could use a few revisions to make it more sensical to the player.
It's only been about a week, but you seem to be healing up a lot faster than normal.
Lang explains you lost a week's worth of time being in the hospital, which begs the question, what has been going on while you were out?
Alright, it looks like you can hold yourself up. All of your equipment managed to be recovered from the Legion. It's in the trunk.
Once you're back on your feet, Lang informs you that your equipment was recovered and you can find it in a trunk at the end of your bed.
General Blackthorn mentioned wanting to speak with you in his office upstairs. As soon as
Lang
you are
tells you
able
to speak
walk,
with Blackthorn and
don't
not to keep him waiting. Blackthorn greets us with a warm welcome, with Rancor standing near the wall to observe your conversation with the general.
Have a seat.
Blackthorn tells us to have a seat so that you two can speak.
I trust you're doing well.
He asks if we are doing well, and we can reply with the same
I feel like shit.
dialogue,
Beep boop. Secret, secret.
which is what I chose because I kind of stopped taking a lot of the dialogue seriously at this point.
You've been through hell and back, so I'm not
Blackthorn
denying.
acknowledges that
But
the
you
courier
appear
has
in
made
much
it through
better
hell and back,
condition
and that
than
he's
last
glad
time
you're
I
in
saw
better
you.
condition than when you
Yes.
arrived
We'll
back
get
to
the matter
base.
at hand. As I'm sure you're aware, we sacrificed much to rescue you from the Legion.
You find out from
Best
Blackthorn
soldiers
that
died
many
to
soldiers
ensure
had
your
died to
survival.
rescue you, and
All
that
I
you are
ask
essentially in his
is you to
debt.
return the favor. I've heard about your exploits in the Mojave. You're a legend
Because
out there.
Blackthorn heard of your
You're the
legendary
one who can
exploits in
bring
the
about
Mojave,
change.
he believes that you are the one to bring
be
about
honest with
change
you,
to the frontier.
the war here
Blackthorn
at the
believes you are
frontier
the
has
one
been
to
at a
break the
stalemate for
stalemate
far
between
too
the bear
long.
and the bull, and that
I
you
know
are
it
the
might
key to
sound
push the
crazy,
NCR to
but I
overcome the
trust that
Legion's
you are the
presence in the
key
frontier.
that will push us
I
forward.
trust that you are the player
Hell,
character.
if I
General Blackthorn claims he didn't know that you were brought to the frontier.
sent out to that bridge in the first place.
First mission is to place landmines on Burnside Bridge.
What? I signed up to fight the Legion.
I didn't say you could talk, Private.
In hindsight of completing the frontier, I now realize that this part of the writing was made to cast suspicion.
Interesting. You'll be reporting to Camp
Whose
Phoenix.
orders was it to send the courier to Camp Phoenix? If it wasn't Blackthorn, who made the decision to assign you to Henderson's squad on the bridge? Blackthorn also says he doesn't know who gave that order, and with Wolfpack dead, there's no trail to find out who ordered Hardcase to send us over to the command center for briefing.
You better hustle up. You'll be briefed on the current situation here. I'll see you around. Good luck out there.
With this chain of command plot sequence established, Blackthorn says that all orders will come directly from him from this point moving forward.
I need you to keep fighting for me. My men are calling for mutiny, wanting to throw me to the wolves. Tensions are too high for the moment. You'll have
Need
to
you
go
to
alone
ease
on
the
this
tension
one.
and remove
That's
your
all
underwear.
I have for you, Courier. I
Trust
won't
me,
be able to
it's the
spare
only
any
way to boost
reinforcements
morale.
for you.
The general asks you to ease some of the tension between members of the exiles because there is some concern over the possibility of a mutiny.
Many are in grievance over the loss of their comrades, especially the loss of Wolfpack. They were my best soldiers. I hate to have to send you back out into the field so soon. I need you to recover their bodies so they can have a proper funeral.
Blackthorn requests that you recover the bodies of Wolfpack so that they may have a proper
I
burial.
already have a small unit at the scene, but they're pinned down by Legion snipers. I'll mark the location on your Pip-Boy. Look for an Officer Parks when you get there.
We are to meet with Officer Parks at a location Blackthorn marks on our Pip-Boy, but before we head out, we can hear from Rancor about some of his backstory with NCR 1st Recon.
I don't have much time for chit-chat. You heard correctly. I served 2 tours in the 1st Recon.
You served with Boone?
The same battalion that Boone served in prior to leaving the NCR to protect Novak. You can ask Rancor to train you in some moves, but Rancor reassures us that we can take care of ourselves already, and that would be a waste of time. Once we learn some bits and pieces from Rancor, he tells us to make ourselves useful and meet with Parks at the rendezvous point. At this point, you have the opportunity to explore some unique locations and encounter new enemies to get some unique frontier loot. Once we're satisfied with exploration, we approach Officer Parks' location. There's landmines everywhere, carefully hidden by the snow, which was a nice touch because the landmines were given a texture with a similar color palette. This is good design choice and is a nice contrast to the typically bright yellow landmines you find in the desert of the Mojave. Now, I don't know if I sequence broke this scene, but once I approached the general location of the crashed vertibird prior to speaking with Parks, the game automatically said I completed the objectives to recover the bodies of Hardcase and Mouse. This could be a bug, or it could be that the developers couldn't implement dragging bodies through countless landmines without being exceptionally infuriating, but it's okay. It made my playthrough easier than it could have been. Legion snipers begin shooting at us if we get closer, and if we open fire on them, they retreat using hit-and-run guerrilla warfare tactics. After I took a few of them out, I stopped wasting my time fighting them and decided to talk to Officer Parks.
Were they the only 2? I hope this is all worth it.
Parks asks us if there were only 2 bodies, and we inform him that these were the only 2 identifiable bodies. Kind of debatable considering in Chapter 1 Hotshot exploded, and Hardcase was riddled with tons of automatic weapons, but I'll let this one slide.
Don't be. They died fighting for their brothers and sisters in arms. You'll do well to remember that. Come on, let's get these guys back home.
Once we finish talking with Parks about Wolfpack's valiant effort dying in the line of duty, we cut to a funeral sequence. Behind the courier are 20 to 30 graves, each with a trooper helmet to mark the gravestones. In front of us are the decorated coffins of Wolfpack. The gloomy fog and light snowfall sets a somber scene to establish a funeral-like vibe. Artistically, this scene was designed well.
Contrary to what you may think, we're not here to mourn these soldiers' deaths. We're here to celebrate
Blackthorn
their
gives a
lives,
very long-winded eulogy.
things they accomplished in their short time with these well, explaining who they were would be pointless. You already know the Wolfpack, and you already know everything they've
So long, in fact, I decided to give Blackthorn and Rancor a sex change and resize them to add some better diversity and emotional impact to the scene.
without fear or hesitation, against all kinds of enemies, from the armored knights of the Brotherhood to the
You can see in his fucking nose holes.
But that wasn't what made them who they are. That wasn't what made them the Wolfpack. If there's anything you want to say, Courier, the stage is open for you.
Slay Queen!
Once Blackthorn runs out of breath, we get the chance to say a few words, and if you choose something inspirational, you gain some NCR Exile fame, which will benefit morale among the troopers. Instead of
patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter
dialogue, troopers will greet you by thanking you for what you said about Wolfpack.
What you said about Wolfpack is really quite inspiring.
This made me feel good and reassured me that I made the right choice in speaking on Wolfpack's valiant efforts to rescue the courier. Soldiers to the left of the many NPCs present during the funeral service produced some rifles and fired them off, and we were given the option to pay some respects. I actually liked this meme in the mod, and I'm sure lots of other people cringed at this being put into a scene that was meant to be so serious, but it made a very long-winded sequence a little funny and kept momentum in enduring Blackthorn's 5 minutes of dialogue. Now that the funeral is finally over, we're given the opportunity to speak with Rancor. We can ask him the question, "What do you even do here?" To which he responds with,
"What I do is none of your concern."
Now, I do think Rancor is badass regardless of what gender we set his character to, and has dialogue that is generally well written, but my biggest issue with Rancor is that the little dialogue he does give outside of main cutscenes does nothing but cast suspicion on Rancor. I'm sure this is mostly as intended, but I thought some of Rancor's writing was a bit cliche in the way that some anime characters that turn evil are objectively easy to spot in the first or second episode. The script doesn't hide Rancor being sus at all. I believe that discovering this so early shouldn't be so easy, especially because there is a lack of dialogue options with essential characters to find out more about Rancor. If the script is going to be this transparent about Rancor potentially being a traitor, I would expect there to be an option to ask about Rancor's backstory with Blackthorn or with some other high-ranking members within the Exiles. That way, some exposition could be given to the courier to reassure the player that Rancor is not a traitor, and provide reasons for Rancor's cryptic and deceptive behavior. In addition, Rancor could perhaps condescendingly lie to the player instead of just withholding information, or provide some logical reasons for acting the way that he does. These additions to dialogue would help mitigate some of the suspicion and create a more complex mystery for the player to unravel. One could argue that if the player has the option to out Rancor as a traitor early, the entire plot would get derailed due to Rancor being so central to the NCR questline. This is why I would perhaps restructure Rancor as more cunning and manipulative, rather than rude, condescending, and cryptic. Even his name, Tiberius, is most likely a reference to Tiberius Caesar Augustus, the second Roman emperor. To give him a name so closely relating to Caesar, making his inevitable betrayal painfully obvious, results in Rancor having no real mystery outside of just being suspicious and deceptive. On top of that, according to etymologyonline.com, the word Rancor is an old French word meaning a stinking smell, or alternatively means grudge or bitterness. Combining both of these words to create one name just raises massive red flags to the player, but provides no way to confirm or disprove suspicion. I do appreciate Rancor's impressive voice acting and participation in the NCR questline, but I think he could be rewritten to be more than just a one-dimensional double-agent villain. After our brief interaction with Rancor, we are instructed to meet Blackthorn in his office. Blackthorn, accompanied by Rancor, guides us into a bunker while giving the courier some brief exposition onto the real reason the NCR exiles are fighting to maintain control of the frontier.
I'm sure you've learned by now that we're not working for the NCR. We're a splinter group who've removed ourselves from Kimball and his narrow-minded conquest to expand the NCR's territorial grasp. We're not against the new California Republic. I believe the NCR to be the best hope to have come out of this post-apocalyptic world.
As we descend deeper into the hangar, the general throws some shade at President Kimball, saying that Kimball is willing to sacrifice whatever and whoever to maintain his rule over NCR territory.
But I blame Kimball for what he has done to it. He turned the NCR into a warmongering nation that no longer cares for its own people.
Blackthorn explains that Kimball ordered very young men to fight in the Brotherhood of Steel War, soldiers who died bravely for a cause not of their own.
My boys, they've been through a lot. Kimball forced them to fight during the Brotherhood of Steel War. However, they still fought hard and bravely, only to die for a cause not of their own.
So far, the player has witnessed the death of Wolfpack, the troopers who died on the operating tables in the ICU as a result of reviving the courier, and the numerous graves at the funeral as a result of Blackthorn's mission to rescue the courier. At this point, anyone should begin to ask the question, how are Blackthorn's actions any better than Kimball's? Kimball sacrificed his men to fight the Brotherhood of Steel to take back Helios 1, as well as sacrificing his men to maintain the NCR's hold over the Mojave in California. I am not justifying the need for war by any means. However, Kimball's decisions make sense because Helios 1 provides sustainable power to the Mojave, and a good leader would use his resources to protect the territories he rules. Blackthorn, on the other hand, sacrificed his most decorated, valuable men along with countless NCR soldiers to keep the courier alive. The courier does what exactly? Use VATS? Again, there's no real explanation for why the courier is any different than someone else with a Pip-Boy. One could argue that Blackthorn was purposely written this way to progress the plot while simultaneously displaying Blackthorn as a flawed character, but I felt like Blackthorn's blatant hypocrisy was beginning to become very heavy-handed. After some slow-paced walking, we reach a platform that descends even further into the bunker. I got the feeling there would be some secret underground base, and I was excited to see what Blackthorn had under his sleeve. Once we reach the bottom floor of the elevator, Blackthorn opens up some dialogue about the atrocities of war, where Blackthorn expresses grief over the loss of his soldiers.
More soldiers left forever
Like this.
scarred and broken by the atrocities of war.
I tried to console him, and I responded with, war is sometimes necessary, and Blackthorn replies that
True, but only to an extent. War often only leads to more war.
That war only results in more war.
Kimball was, of course, determined to hold Hoover Dam at all costs. He ordered my men and I to reinforce the dam. I had two choices: lead my men into another bloody war, only to satisfy Kimball's vision, or leave the NCR and be labeled as a deserter.
He explains that Kimball defended Hoover Dam at all costs, but again, Blackthorn did the same thing on behalf of the Courier. Before I beat a dead horse on the Frontier's writing, I will conclude with the statement that Blackthorn seems to be written as a 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of character, a conflicted general with a heart of gold. He is somewhat likable, but his philosophical views on the actions of the NCR as well as his own actions are nonsensical and deeply flawed. Blackthorn could use some revision, or simply just give an explanation why he values the Courier to the extent that he does over the lives of his own men. All in all, the lengthy tour of the bunker and slow walking sequences could use some shortening because the heavy-handed dialogue became tiresome after a while. On a more positive note, when the viewing deck of the underground hangar is reached, we get our first look at an impressive feat of technology, an airship named the Liberator. I predicted the big reveal to be an upgraded Liberty Prime, and the Frontier exceeded my expectations. The camera pans over the Liberator several times to show off the exterior of the model in its entirety. The ship is reminiscent of the UNSC Infinity from Halo, and the blue futuristic textures at the front of the hull are nice to look at. Some of the doors are similar to those used in Enclave locations, and I believe that is as intended.
Is fully restored, it would certainly turn the tide for us in our conflict with both the Legion and Kimball's NCR. However, in its current state, it can't even get airlifted. It's essentially a massive paperweight while in this hangar.
Blackthorn insists we are the key to push his plan to fruition.
This is where your help is needed, Courier. As I said before, whether you help us find what we need, or just help us last long enough in this conflict so that the Liberator can be brought to fruition, will justify everything we have sacrificed up to this point.
And at this point, the player can finally raise some questions and point out that Blackthorn has no idea what he is doing.
I trust that you are the key that will push us forward. Hopefully in time.
Oh man, I'm disappointed,
you will see
Daddy.
what I mean. Follow me.
This response upsets Blackthorn, and with a sigh, he explains that we will understand in due time. I suppose I made the wrong choice here, but at this point I still had little understanding of how the Courier is central to Blackthorn's plan. Blackthorn leads us to another elevator down to the bottom floor of the hangar. During the descent, I started to realize automated transportation in the Frontier has some glaring issues.
One of our greatest threats we face in the Frontier.
I noticed that anytime elevators or vertebrates were used with the Courier aboard, the Courier grunts as if the player was taking
not
fall
like
damage.
A stable pathway. It's trying to register fall damage, maybe?
I was using a mod to disable fall damage, but I imagine if fall damage was the culprit, my character's health would be decreasing. Player movement is disabled on automated transport sequences. I'm not sure why fall damage wouldn't simply be disabled naturally during these cutscenes, but I digress. It could be a mod load error on my end. Hell, the voice clips for fall damage could be muted during these sequences if the developers are looking for an easy fix. Upon approaching the Liberator, Blackthorn gives some exposition to describe the Frontier Legion.
You may be aware that this isn't the same Legion as seen in the Mojave. They're more or less tribals who have pledged allegiance to Caesar's Legion. They weren't much of a threat when you first arrived. But somehow Caesar learned of our presence here and sent his legate, Marcus Valerius, and Frumentari to spearhead the tribals against us. Alarmingly, the tribals have outnumbered and even outgunned us in a number of ways. Because of their nativity to this region, they have proven to be far more versatile and have been gathering.
I think the writing here was well done, and I visualized his description easily. These few lines made the backstory of the Frontier Legion more intimidating and brought more substance to the Legion than in New Vegas' writing. I personally believe that as a singular faction, the NCR are as bland as the Brotherhood of Steel, but with the Legion being the antithesis to the NCR, with both factions at war with one another, brings better world building to the NCR. Without the savage tribals of the Legion and ruthless leaders like Valerius and Caesar there to contrast Kimball and Blackthorn, the NCR would be a lot less interesting. Blackthorn then brings up the possibility of there being Legion spies within the ranks of the NCR.
If you have any information of a potential breach in our ranks, I must be informed of it.
Blackthorn says lives lost during Wolfpack's assault to rescue the courier and during the bridge mission in Chapter 1 could have been avoided if the NCR's plans weren't revealed to the Legion. Blackthorn also blames lack of supplies and ammunition on internal theft, as many of them have gone missing. He says the Scavers and the Legion have been using the NCR TB-44s, the same anti-tank missile launchers used in Chapter 1, so obviously somebody has been giving them out to enemies of the NCR.
Dolus?
Dolus?
Ah.
During our interrogation with Legate Valerius, a young boy had approached him to deliver a message to Valerius from someone named Dolus. In fact, Dolus is a Latin word meaning deception or fraud. I think the wordplay used in the writing of the Frontier is creative, however, this solidified Rancor being my #1 suspect, considering both his first and last name have definitions connected to the concept of deception. Our lack of dialogue responses was a missed opportunity to quell any suspicions we might have had about Rancor's behavior, or inquire about anyone else the player might have suspected up until now. One could argue that with Rancor smoking a cigarette 3 feet away from the courier, it wouldn't be in the player's best interest to point the finger at Rancor. Either way, if the player had high speech skill or a terrifying presence perk, I believe the writers could have incorporated the option to use some ballsy speech options during this particular interaction. Also, blaming the deaths of soldiers on the possibility of leaked intel provided by a spy makes Blackthorn look even more oblivious to his own poor decision-making than before. A blitzkrieg assault on Legion territory is obviously going to result in casualties, so blaming the outcome on leaked intel is poor writing. If this is as intended, this particular sequence makes Blackthorn an even more incompetent leader to the NCR exiles. I think Blackthorn's character wasn't given justice in this particular sequence, and his dialogue weakened my first impression of Blackthorn as the strong, caring, emphatic leader I met in Chapter 1. We take yet another elevator to reach the deck of the Liberator with Rancor in tow. The slow elevator ride is accompanied by some awkward silence between the courier, Rancor, and Blackthorn. Upon reaching the deck, we meet Wei, a very short man with a robotic arm and some dorky glasses. Blackthorn says Wei is the lead engineer working on the reconstruction of the Liberator. Wei begins some dialogue with the courier, saying that he does not need the courier's help and he can fix it himself.
Johnny Silverhand?
Ah, this here is Wei, my lead engineer on the Liberator, who you may have already met.
Yes. Hello, courier. As much as Blackthorn may think I need your help, I will have this aircraft fully functional in only a matter of time. You'll see. You'll all see.
What's your problem, dude?
The quality in his voice lines is poor compared to the other voice actors, and his sneering voice made him unlikable in my opinion. You can offer some help, and he does some partridge in a pear tree play on words asking for a large list of supplies.
Well, since you're asking, I could use 12 duct tape, 11 pilot lights, 10 leaf blowers, 9 leather belts, 8 milk bottles, 7 scrap metal, 6 garden gnomes, 5 golden gecko eggs, 4 cherry bombs, 3 fission batteries, 2 teddy bears, and a, Brahmin in a talking tree.
This was supposed to be funny, but I didn't laugh or feel obligated to help Wei complete his repairs. You can ask Wei what he knows about the Liberator, and he scoffs.
It's an aircraft carrier that flies.
And says the Liberator is an aircraft carrier that flies. Asking about the Liberator is not a dumb question, and since it was just introduced, I would assume the player would want to find out more information about its functions, but I felt I was being punished for wanting to learn about lore from his character. I immediately concluded dialogue with Wei because I felt like I was wasting my time, and he felt like more of a nuisance than a well-written NPC.
Ideally, I plan to put your skills of exploration to good use and have you scavenge any remote locations that may contain the components needed to complete the Liberator.
Once again, Blackthorn reiterates that the courier is essential to pulling off his plan, but then is immediately interrupted by a messenger informing him that the Legion are approaching the airport terminal to attack the NCR while their guard is down.
General, Blackthorn. Sir, possible. Enemy attack on the airport.
Are you sure of this?
Yes, sir.
Blackthorn orders the courier to accompany a tank envoy to push back the Legion and Scavers.
They must think we are still weak from the recent battle with the Legion and are attempting to finish us off. But we'll let them know we're not finished here just yet.
Blackthorn promises the courier in the event the mission is completed, the player would be given his own tank.
Courier, I'll need your assistance on this. You'll go with the tank crew to intercept the scavs.
I get to drive a tank!
I appreciate the enthusiasm. Maybe afterwards we'll teach you how to drive one.
I was super excited to operate a tank and was pleasantly surprised when we reached the hangar and teleported into the interior of an armored bear tank. If you brought any companions with you, they will be inside the cramped interior of the tank, which is pretty funny, and after a short briefing by the driver, you are ordered to mount the top of the tank with a machine gun. Once the courier is atop the tank, you and a few other tanks enter scaver territory outside the NCR Exile airstrip. This tank sequence is much more polished than the escort mission in Chapter 1. The driver orders you to practice your aim with the tank cannon and machine gun.
Cool.
Aim the tank's cannon via a crosshair, which fires a shell at considerable range. The shell fires with an arc similar to that of a grenade launcher, just with more firepower. Even the reloading sound is the same as the Mercenary's grenade rifle, so I speculate the developers just swapped out the rifle model with a long barrel and adjusted the velocity of the grenade. To avoid complaints, I would probably swap the reload sound out for something that fits loading tank munitions. You can switch firing modes to a hefty machine gun or fire the cannon and machine gun simultaneously. The tank's crosshair is separate from the machine gun, which makes for some awkward controls in which you have to sync up the cannon and the machine gun to do effective damage on targets. After getting the hang of the tank's weapon controls, we cut to a scene that feels like a cross between Mad Max and Wacky Racers, where a caravan of Legion buggies are approaching the tank entourage at high speeds. The camera work in this sequence is cinematic, sure, but I would be more intimidated if the vehicles looked less goofy. I'm not asking for Optimus Prime semi-trucks or Lamborghinis, but 4 tanks versus 5 minivans and a few dune buggies doesn't seem like much of a fair fight. I gotta give the developers credit for putting vehicles into the New Vegas engine. It's really a sight to behold and something I never thought would be implemented into a Fallout game. In terms of combat, vehicle-on-vehicle fights are pretty fun. Some of the Legion vehicles fire napalm rounds like that of the Incinerator, and some have mounted turrets that fire at high rates. Your tank rounds will demolish vehicles in one shot, so the machine gun feels more of a tank accessory than a viable damage-dealing weapon against other vehicles. After taking out a few Legion vehicles, you hear a honk of a horn, and someone shouts, Turns out the Legion uses nukes strapped to a car as part of their winning strategy to fight exile tanks. I will admit that the nuke cars added tension to this scene. The only warning key was a horn, giving you about 2 seconds to react and fire on the vehicle. Very quickly the horn conditioned me to panic, and frantically moved my cannon about to find any nukes on wheels approaching the tank. After being hit by one of the nuke cars, our tank's movement is then disabled, and as a result the driver says that the co-pilot died during impact. We are then instructed to not only fire the tank's weaponry, but operate the tank as well. This can be pretty difficult and confusing and requires some finagling to accomplish effectively. Scavers will attack the tank on foot, so the courier has to drive the tank while fighting off scaver soldiers. Watching the scavs explode and seeing their bodies ragdoll all over the place was hilarious, and I'm glad this was added to the sequence instead of just vehicle-on-vehicle combat. After the scavers are made into cannon fodder, more Legion reinforcements arrive. We now have to fight scavers, nuclear warheads on wheels, and Legion vehicles, all while operating clunky tank controls. Honestly, I didn't mind this sequence too much. The added difficulty was fun, and my own panicked reactions made me laugh more than just getting me frustrated. The tank's vehicle horsepower/HP recovers over time if we don't move, so I wasn't particularly worried about dying. Only you and one other tank are still standing, and you have to keep up with your tank partner while fighting off scavers. The partner tank's AI is buggy, similar to that of the Armored Bear in Chapter 1, and it seems as if there were no real colliders between our tank and the other salvaged tank. Sometimes I saw my tank literally become one with the other tank. In other instances, however, Legion vehicles would awkwardly push the other salvaged tank above them, so I'm not sure what the technical aspects of vehicle collisions are. I feel like the developers should maybe implement a patch to fix some of these odd encounters, but I'm still glad to have vehicle and tank combat nonetheless. After about 10 to 15 minutes of fighting off the coordinated assault by Legion caravans and scavers, you and the last surviving tank approach the edge of some suburbs where we notice the sky suddenly darkens. The cloudy atmosphere and twilight skies create a foreboding scene, and I was impressed with the transition. Another Legion caravan approaches when suddenly a giant blue death ray strikes their vehicle seemingly out of nowhere. The blue light leaves behind it a path of destruction, and all of the Legion vehicles are annihilated. I thought that this might have been the fully operational Liberator coming to our aid, but the death beam vaporizes not just the Legion, but the NCR tanks as well. The screen flares white with a massive explosion, the courier is dazed, and a watchman who operated the tank checks in on us and asks if we're okay. We can mention to him that a vertibird with rocket boosters flew overhead prior to the assault. I did notice this, but because it was so obscured by the bridge, I thought it might have been a Legion vehicle driving on the bridge to get some high ground on the tanks. Perhaps the developers should put the vertibird more in the player's cone of vision? Or was this intentional so that the player would put 2 and 2 together not at the time of the encounter, but during the watchman's dialogue? I don't know, it seemed kind of out of place and could have been made more obvious to the player if we were supposed to notice the high-tech vertibird from the get-go. Once we return to base and are fully recovered, Blackthorn briefs us on what really happened during our encounter with the mysterious death ray.
Yes. We only found out about this death ray after seizing Helios 1 from the Brotherhood.
Oh, it's the Helios 1 ray.
It turns out that the beam of light was caused by the Archimedes 2 space station's orbital cannon. According to the Fallout Wiki, Archimedes is a land-based directed energy weapon developed by Poseidon Energy at Helios 1. The NCR fought the Brotherhood of Steel for control of Helios 1 during Operation Sunburst in Chapter 1. Helios 1 is a solar power plant that powers not just the Mojave, but the Archimedes death ray as well. Elder Elijah had apparently tried to use Archimedes during Operation Sunburst to stop the NCR's assault on the Brotherhood, but failed. As a result, Elijah activated security systems to prevent Archimedes from being used by the NCR. I remembered in the main game of New Vegas, the Euclid Sea-Finder can be used to fire Archimedes on a target for massive damage. It's nice to see that the Frontier expands on some of the lore in New Vegas, and this plot point ties the Frontier's introduction, Operation Sunburst, to events later in the Frontier's questline.
It seems beyond the means of the Brotherhood, and of all the enemies we have been up against.
Enclave?
Only the Enclave has had access to the kind of technology you're describing. But what are they doing in the Frontier?
General Blackthorn comes to the conclusion that it is not the Brotherhood who controls Archimedes, but it is in fact the Enclave using Archimedes 2 to further their own ambitions. Blackthorn rewards us with our own personal tank for defending the airstrip, and we are instructed to reach Officer Parks for a briefing on a hunt to find the Enclave. After a few-mile hike through some snow and the dilapidated ruins of Scaver territory, we can find Parks on the roof of a building overlooking a broken highway bridge.
Courier, I'm assuming Blackthorn sent you. This really is the Enclave we're talking about. The NCR dealt with them in the past, though with a bit of help. Hell, I was certain that the NCR had finally wiped them out for good. I never expected to see him make a return like this. This new weapon of theirs changes everything. It goes beyond anything we've been up against.
He believes that there is a suspicious bright light on the other side of the canal, but since the bridge is out, he can't get a clear enough view.
There's definitely something on the other side of that canal, but I can't get close enough to get a good look. I can see a bright light. Looks like it's coming from a machine of sorts. Seems pretty high-tech, whatever it is. There's no safe way to get across the canal. All the bridges are wrecked. Not only that, if we get any closer, we risk getting spotted. With that death ray of theirs, well, you know the rest.
We get introduced to another trooper named Badger, who calls in a vehicle for us to drive across the broken bridge.
Hold on, I think I might have an idea. Bit crazy, but it just might work.
Shoot.
This plan is a little weird in my opinion. Park says flying a vertibird overhead of the bright light would be too obvious, so they need a more covert way of approaching the light. To mitigate this, Parks and Badger call in a vertibird outside the light's perimeter to deliver a buggy. The vertibird is clearly in view of whatever location holds the bright light, so for continuity's sake I would have called in the vertibird out of sight from the compound. But I digress, this is a minor plot point and could easily be fixed by placing a hill or something to obscure where the vertibird flies the vehicle in. The exile vertibird drops in a salvaged Legion buggy, and we hop inside to drive it. The vehicle controls are surprisingly smooth. If you build enough momentum, the buggy can get some sick air, clearing massive gaps in the bridge fairly easily. If you fail any of the jumps, you explode instantly, which can make for a laugh or two, but I think a quick fade to black respawn could have been implemented instead of watching the courier die a fiery, explodey death a couple of times. The scenery and ambience on the bridge is pretty nice. The dark skies, fog, and dimly lit villages in the distance add to the aesthetic of driving the dune buggy. Once we've crossed the bridge, the courier and Badger exit the buggy to get some overwatch on the Tesla lightning storm off in the distance while heavy snow obscures your vision. Badger says airstrikes are out of the question due to the sheer verticality of the lightning storm, and a full ground assault would get vaporized by Archimedes, so he recommends a stealth infiltration mission spearheaded by the courier. This makes sense, I guess. However, I think the NCR could muster a stealth team if they really wanted to. I didn't raise any questions though, because I wanted to solid snake the Enclave compound solo. Badger gives us some advanced stealth boys and some silenced weaponry. I was fortunate enough to have about 30 stealth boys, a silenced sniper rifle, and my Tesla helmet visor, so I was pumped to take out some Enclave soldiers and get some sick new armor. With our visor set to thermal and stealth boys hotkeyed, we rappel off the bridge and begin our stealth mission to investigate the Enclave base. Badger provides overwatch from the bridge, and if we aim down sights, enemies are highlighted in red, similar to Boone's spotter perk in New Vegas. If we have a target in our sights, we can hit the Z key and Badger will take out our intended target. Badger only has about 5 shots though, so I use them sparingly on the Mark 7 turrets and sentry bots. The Enclave cryo soldiers are pretty squishy and can be taken out easily using our sniper rifle. After taking about 4 to 5 enemies out stealthily, the PA loudspeaker warns the rest of the Enclave that there are intruders in the base, putting the enemies on high alert. This makes sneaking harder and makes the sequence more tense. I didn't mind this because I was prepared for it, but I imagine a player jumping into the frontier without New Vegas weaponry or items would be shitting their pants during this mission. Our mission is to hack the terminals at each corner of the compound without being detected. If at any point our stealth boys run out, the Enclave will detect us and open fire. If all Enclave enemies are alerted, there is a chance that cyborg death claws are released from their cages and we will die very easily. The turrets and sentry bots are the biggest problem because of their high DPS and laser weapons melt our armor and health very quickly. Badger gave us about 5 advanced stealth boys, which do last longer than normal. However, I think 5 is a bit on the short side for someone trying to take out high-level turrets, sentry bots, and Enclave cryo soldiers. Giving the player about 8 stealth boys would allot for player error and provide the player with the freedom to experiment with their own stealth tactics. Regardless, if you want to play it safely and cheese the mission, I recommend circling the compound with a silent sniper rifle or something similar and take out the enemies from a distance. If the courier is detected, the player can then retreat until the Enclave loses the player's scent, and the player can begin pot-shotting the Enclave without risk of being jumped by 20 enemies. Being in the middle of the compound has the highest risk, because the compound is a square with no real cover, and traveling from one corner to another risks being detected by all enemies at once, and is almost a guaranteed death, unless you hotkeyed your stimpaks and are willing to blow 15 to 20 of them going in guns blazing. All in all, I enjoyed the stealth mission. It was something different that is rarely present in Fallout. The high tension, action, new enemies, and bringing the Enclave into the fold brought world building to factions in the frontier. Once the courier has hacked all 4 terminals and the force field is shut down, fuck yeah. The NCR vertibirds begin bombing the Enclave base with an impressive light show of explosions and gunfire. The exiles deploy some reinforcements. The quest marker takes the courier to a console where we tear off a component to bring back to base.
Phew! That could have gone way worse. Damn fine work, courier. This wouldn't have gone as smoothly without you. Now we need to secure the camp, make sure there aren't any stragglers, and gather whatever intel we can find. I would suggest checking out those vertibirds of theirs first, make sure none of them try to take off.
Parks recommends we check out the Enclave vertishuttles for anything of interest. The vertishuttle interiors are well designed and really do look like space shuttles. Once aboard, we can find the Euclid Seafinder Prime weapon in the cockpit. Upon investigating, Dr. Voss, a bootleg Nazi scientist straight out of Wolfenstein, appears.
You shouldn't take what doesn't belong.
Shaming us for taking what doesn't belong to us. We get hit with what seems like a Tesla cannon, and we're then yeeted off of the vertishuttle. The vertishuttle engines fire, and no amount of gunfire hinders its liftoff. We can only take some pot shots at it, and before we know it, the thing is already flown off in space. Explosions go off behind us, and the courier is then ambushed by nano-prototype androids. These enemies do lots of damage and are bullet spongy. If you have high damage energy weapons, or some good melee weapons, use those, but keep in mind the androids self-destruct once killed, so manage your loadout effectively. Once the nano-androids are taken out.
What the hell were those things? They just dropped down from the sky. And what happened to you and that vertibird? The scientist? He's probably the one in charge of the operations here. Damn it! He's gonna alert the rest of the Enclave. If they decide to return with reinforcements, it won't be good for us. We need to get those other 2 vertishuttles back to base as soon as possible, and then figure out where to go from there.
Parks recommends we leave the compound before Enclave reinforcements arrive. The Enclave conveniently left behind 2 of the vertishuttles, which immediately informed me that we were going to space. Even though the writing makes the Enclave look sloppy and incompetent, I didn't really care because I knew that this was done to progress the plot and take the New Vegas gameplay into a fucking space station. Hell yeah. Once we return to the hangar, Blackthorn asks Way what information he could find out about the Archimedes 2 space station, and Way responds that the station is massive and self-sufficient in terms of resources. Blackthorn is concerned by this news and instructs us to follow him to an operating table where we witness the remains of an Enclave soldier next to an autodock. According to the autopsy, the soldier's brain and spinal cord were replaced with electronics, meaning the soldiers are lobotomites who are controlled remotely somehow. This would explain how hard they are to fight. Because of the dangerous implications of this troubling news, Blackthorn is then determined to make an assault on Archimedes 2 and put together a team headed by the courier to stop the Enclave once and for all. Gray suddenly shows up and objects to the plan.
How on earth are we going to do that?
We already have everything we need to accomplish this undertaking. We know where their headquarters is and a way to get in.
You plan to use the spacecrafts to travel to Archimedes 2?
Precisely.
But that would be suicide. We have no idea what will be waiting for us up there, or if we'll even be able to reach it.
Saying that this is yet again another suicide mission with no intel on what is on the space station, and that there is no guarantee the Verta shuttles will be able to reach the station safely. Blackthorn displays some even more blind faith in the courier with his typical,
I'm confident that with a team of our most skilled operatives headed by the courier, we will have success in this operation.
So I gotta ask, how hasn't anyone tried to take out Blackthorn yet? I mean, fuck, I'm excited to go to space and shit, but Blackthorn is definitely a gambling man putting all chips on the courier. It really bothers me that they haven't explained why the courier is the chosen one or whatever for all of these suicide missions, and I had a feeling that this highly skilled team is going to be missing a few members by the end of it. Wei then says that the Verta shuttles work and there is a convenient autopilot feature that will guide the ships to the Archimedes. Unfortunately, the shuttle's power cores are missing, so we have to retrieve them and bring them back to Blackthorn before the mission can begin. Immediately after the briefing, Rancor hijacks the dialogue tree.
If you have any questions, now's the time.
Asking if we have any questions. We can ask Rancor to be more open with us.
Fine. I'm a soldier. Always have been. I've been raised since youth to obey and follow orders. No other way around. I will fight and die for my cause because it is what I believe.
What I was
told to believe. There. Are you satisfied yet? Or do I need to explain my tragic backstory too?
With condescension, he asks if we want to know his tragic backstory as well. There's some funny dialogue options where we can ask Rancor
why are you dressed like a James Bond villain?
It's called style, and it looks better than whatever you're wearing. More importantly, it keeps me incognito. In case you haven't realized, not everyone has a favorable opinion of the NCR.
Where Rancor replies with, it's called style, and it keeps him incognito or something. In my opinion, Rancor is the least incognito person within the NCR Exiles. But hey, if that's what he thinks, that's cool with me. Don't get me wrong, I like Rancor a lot, but the Exiles really need to get their sus meters checked out considering they think Rancor isn't hiding something. If you want to get told off by Rancor, you can ask him the question, what do you even do here anyway? Where Rancor explains,
what is this, an interview? I'm Blackthorn's top reconnaissance agent, as in I spy and gather intel on the enemy and perform covert operations. I'm also second in command, so do not cross me. I don't find you to be as reliable as Blackthorn claims you are. Bit of advice, don't get too attached to anyone out here.
I think every bit of Rancor's dialogue sounds cool. Ray Chase's voice acting does the character justice, but the blind trust that Blackthorn puts in the courier and Rancor really started to bug me. Before heading out to Junk Fleet, we can request that we bring Muscle with us considering we are going into heavy scaver territory. Rancor sarcastically says that we are two fully grown adults that can take care of ourselves. Every bit of dialogue delivered by Rancor sussed me out even more, but at a certain point you have to just accept you're along for the ride. I would have appreciated a quest to investigate Rancor's behavior or something, because there's so many instances where Rancor says something vague with potential ulterior motives, but in the end the player has no freedom to find out what he really means by what he says. After being shamed by Rancor, we get approached by Gray, who invites us to a bar for some drinks.
Hey courier, think you got time for a drink or two?
Sure, why not?
Okay, let's meet at the rec hall. Quieter there.
This is the point at which Gray begins to really question his loyalty to Blackthorn.
Ever since I first arrived at the frontier, things have been moving faster than ever. It's hard to keep up with it at times, and sometimes I'm not always sure if what we are doing here is even right. I mean, we originally came here to escape President Kimball's tyranny, but now it seems we are only repeating everything I thought we were trying to escape from. We are starting conflicts with the locals, pushing them out of their land and stealing their resources.
I'm starting a mutiny.
Now we're in a war with the Legion all the way up here, and now the Enclave. It just never stops. I thought by following Blackthorn to the frontier, things would be different. But now, I fear I was wrong. Good people die needlessly. I'm sure you don't want to listen to another one of my sob stories.
And to explain his backstory, we are given the option to complete a flashback mission where we play as Gray.
I'm interested in your story.
This was quite some time ago, at the very beginning of the NCR Brotherhood Wars. I was stationed at an NCR camp in San Jose. Back then, the NCR was barely a sizable match for the Brotherhood's superior technology. When they came marching into the city, the NCR quickly retreated, leaving many of their soldiers behind. I found myself stranded in the city with a small pocket of soldiers, after it had been overrun by the Brotherhood.
Ugh. I did this mission. It's hard. You're undersupplied, you're given a magnum, some trooper fatigues, and a combat knife, and you have to run around Brotherhood of Steel occupied territory looking for TB-44s. You're given 2 to start, which is nice, but you have to take out 4, yes, 4 Brotherhood vertibirds using your given loadout. TB-44s are scattered among the ruins of various locations, so you have to run around killing paladins and the like, looting their gear and hunting for the missile launchers. You can't switch out your fatigues to power armor, which is kind of bullshit in my opinion because the odds are not in your favor, and any amount of added defense would help in surviving 4 helicopters and Brotherhood of Steel paladins at the same time. Did I mention there's a tank?
That's a fucking tank, dude. What?
Yeah, like the same tank from the Brazen Bullfight in Chapter 1. You can either use your TB-44 and take it out, or just run away as fast as possible and sneak around looking for the missile launchers.
I'm not having a good time with this mission. I might just skip it. I'm doing this.
The only way I really managed to do this fight was have a sprint mod and boost my jump height. I used my 2 TB-44s on the 2 vertibirds, farmed some paladins for miniguns, and took the remaining vertibirds out using the miniguns.
Yes! Yes!
The mission is possible if you're stealthy and skilled enough, but I feel like the developers could have at least given you a temporary companion or some better gear to start with.
Great job, singular soldier that took down 4 helicopters by himself using a minigun. Congratulations, you did it.
Fine work taking out those vertibirds.
What is all that?
Oh, this. It's mostly Brotherhood equipment we managed to recover.
Where are the wounded? Why aren't they on the trucks?
Those wounded are no longer of any use to the war effort. If you're done wasting time, get your ass on this truck so we can get the hell out of here. Driver, let's go now. Don't let that son of a bitch get away.
What? What am I doing? Why am I shooting the NCR? Because I'm doing something they don't like?
Damn mind.
Fuck.
What happened? Reliability. I told you.
Just hold on. I won't leave you behind. I need first aid.
I thought we were brothers.
Don't speak. He died there, in the street. He didn't even understand why. He believed in the NCR, followed them without question, and believed that they were his brothers. Then, they left him, dying in the streets, along with countless others.
Once the flashback has ended, Gray explains to the courier that he would give up his own life for the well-being of his men. Gray reiterates he was tasked with missions against insurmountable odds, and took it upon himself to take out 4 vertibirds by himself so that his brothers in arms could use a supply truck to escape being pinned down by the Brotherhood. Only to find out, after all of his efforts, Gray's commanding officer took the supply truck and ditched his men. Gray explains that this particular mission sparked his distrust in Kimball and the NCR. His distrust grew more so into hatred at Operation Sunburst. Gray saw Blackthorn leave the NCR, and as a result, he followed suit to become an exile. Gray believed that Blackthorn would lead his men differently than Kimball, but after all Gray has seen these past few weeks, he's not so sure. Gray is one of the few sensible, likable characters in the Frontier, and is probably one of the only voices of reason amongst the cast and the exiles. It's just a shame Gray is too cucked to raise concerns to Blackthorn, and as far as I know, the game doesn't give you an option to call out Blackthorn's poor decision making. We can reassure Gray that war is war, or whatever, or escalate his distrust in Blackthorn, but I really felt locked into progressing discussing the main plot. If, during this conversation, we were given a new quest to investigate some leads, I would have totally been down to find an alternative, but because I felt Gray's mission was a side quest meant to bog down the NCR Exiles quest line, I just let it go because the game was dangling space combat in front of me, and I didn't want to turn that down. Once we've completed Gray's side quest, we accompany Rancourt to Junk Flea.
You ready?
I'm ready.
I'll get us through the gate. Just stay behind me, and don't talk to anyone unless you need to.
Rancourt instructs us to say nothing and just follow him through the gate.
He is neutral ground for all factions. It functions as a business syndicate with the interest of trading weapons, narcotics, prostitution, mercenaries, slaves, you name it. Even if it's not material goods you're looking for, there's also valuable information on individuals and factions within the frontier that can be bought. That's what I regularly come here for.
And look at that fat cock. It's huge.
Rancourt then leads us to a marketplace where he inquires with a ghoul merchant about the power cores.
You'd offer me more TVs.
Not today, Daniel. I'm looking for something.
Really? And who's this you brought with you?
A mutual friend of mine.
I've never seen him around here before. He's not gonna cause problems, is he?
The ghoul in question doesn't know much.
Listen, I just need to know if you've ever seen anything like this before.
Nah, I haven't.
So Rancourt instructs us to find out what we can from different people in Junk Flea. If we explore deep enough, we can reach Junk Flea's underbelly. You can evade a shakedown reminiscent of the Skyrim shakedown in Riften.
Hold up. You need to pay the toll before you cross this bridge.
If your speech is high enough. The shakedown guard warns us to hang on tight to our caps.
So you can see through me. Good for you. You're still making a mistake coming down here. I'll let you pass, but don't expect to keep a hold on your valuables for long while down here.
And boy is he right to warn us. Thieves will run at really high speeds past you and purloin sometimes 100 caps at a time. And if we don't shoot them in time, they phase out of existence. Carry a quick draw weapon at all times and use VATS if you can. Because I was robbed around 6 separate times and I didn't react fast enough, so those caps were gone forever. On the way further down into Junk Flea's underbelly, we meet another sketchy guy named Cypher, who is 100% a snitch.
Hey, you! I think I know you. You the courier? You should probably watch your back down here, courier.
There's also a girl there who will offer to suck you off.
I'll suck you off for 5 caps.
I had a feeling this was a robbery from the get-go.
I'll take that offer.
But I was still curious to see what would happen.
She's gonna rob me of everything, probably. Where are my pants? All your items. I knew it. I knew it.
Of course, we get robbed of all of our gear, and we have to go searching for her.
Where the hell is Lacey, dude?
Once we're on the hunt, a kid will stop us and ask us for some caps.
You spare some change?
Which, obviously, we have none because we were robbed blind.
I don't have any money. I got everything robbed.
He gets pissed and calls us a mungo, and as a result, we lose scavenger karma. So, naturally, I did what anyone else would do in this situation, and gave the kid a charged R2 and wished him on his way. Once you finally reach the thief, you can ask her politely for your gear back.
There you are.
Well. Aw, did you lose your things? I'm so
To which she laughs at you and says, good luck.
Good.
I'll fucking murder you, dude.
We can pickpocket the key off of her, but where's the fun in that? I totally ragdolled her with a haymaker, and in doing so, we get jumped by some gang members. Killing them all will give us the key to a safe with all of our belongings. There's a new faction in Junk Flea called the Scavengers, and you have the option to do some odd jobs around Junk Flea for some faction fame.
Something. Give me some perkies, bro. Some perk 30s.
I actually liked some of these missions, particularly the baseball gang.
What are these guys? The baseball boys?
You lost? You must be lost. Nothing but opportunity down here. Oh, let me show you.
I'm gonna shove that bat so far up your ass to be coughing up splinters.
I think you might just have the nails to join this gang. Tell you what, if you help us strike out some feral ghouls, I'll make you a part of it. Hell, if you do a bang-up job, I'll give you the gun I have on my back. They're in the room just on the other side of this wall. Good game! We struck those ferals out.
Hell yeah.
You are now officially a bat. Oh, and here, take this.
It's a rocket launcher that shoots baseballs. Damn, all these guys fucking died, dude.
And the hunt down my arms mission for the ghoul.
He has no arms.
Hey, oh. They just keep falling off. I could usually sew one back on, but then they both fell off. You really will do that for me? I don't have any caps to offer you, but wow. My arms were dragged off by the rats. You'll have to fight your way through them. I'm also not sure of what is all down there. There is only one man I know who has gone down there, but he never returned.
Is this guy king of the rats?
They're fun and creative and provide the underbelly of Junk Fleet with its own distinct culture.
Rag's arms, there it is.
Oh, hey. Huh? You actually found them? Now I just need to find...
Here, I'll go.
Oh, wow. This is great. My arms have never felt so attached. I don't think I'll have to worry about them falling off anymore. I know I said I had nothing to... It's all I can give you.
Thanks, man.
There's also a bar in Junk Fleet where we can ask for some information from a barkeep on who would know about power cores.
What's your poison? Enclave, you say? Ah, I'm assuming you must be looking for Carl then. That drunkard babbles all kinds of nonsense. I wouldn't believe a word he says. What you want him for? Does he owe you money as well?
I just need to talk to him.
Well, you're not going to find him in here anymore. He's currently being held in a slave pen just down that tunnel.
Right.
Move your eye jelly somewhere else, Two Legs. Bug-Eye doesn't have time for your hurt words.
Side note, there's an interesting looking NPC here with a bag over his head named Bug-Eye.
Are you okay?
No. Bug-Eye opposite of okay. Bug-Eye is no-K. Bug-Eye had a friend, see? A Four Legs. Bernardo is Bug-Eye's friend.
Who can give you a quest to rescue his friend Bernardo. Do not take this quest. Don't do it. It's essentially a gigantic fetch quest.
Yes? Oh, Bernardo? I don't have him anymore. I bought Bernardo to cheer up our patients, but that didn't work. I don't know. He just disappeared. But a young woman came through here. Called herself, XBZ 8756.
The quest's objectives are comprised of roaming around the entirety of the Frontier's world space, asking various NPCs Bernardo's whereabouts.
This is her.
Beep boop. Secret. I've got a secret. I'm just messing with you. What do you need? Bernardo? Oh yeah, I remember him. He was great. To answer your question, I don't know where he is. He wasn't exactly my kind of merchandise, so I offloaded him as fast as I could.
Who has him now?
Some woman. I think her name was... Vent?
God damn. What is this epic fetch quest, dude?
Wait, are you? You are. Another person, finally! Wow, your feet must really hurt. Oh, sorry, I'm Vent. You can rest here if you need
When
to.
asked about Bernardo, every NPC will say something along the lines of,
Oh, he was cute. But I don't know where he is. He was heavy, so I had to get rid of him.
Our ghoul has him now.
Hello, friend. Have you found gold Jesus? So I sent him back to the church. Are you alright?
No. Whoa.
Alas, we do not. His body was simply too weak to stay here. He was forced out, likely taken by a Wendigo.
Oh god. Oh my god, Bernardo was a teddy bear? Bernardo was a teddy bear.
Spoiler alert, Bernardo is not a dog or a person. It is in fact a teddy bear. Yes, a teddy bear. If you're quick enough, the quest will take you about 2 hours, and I was expecting some kind of cool reward or unique weapon or something, but for all of your efforts, I shit you not.
Are you telling me this whole time I've been looking for a fucking teddy bear?
Two Legs confused. Bernardo isn't Yao Guai. Bernardo is Bug-Eye friend. Now give Bug-Eye Bernardo. Bug-Eye is of the thankful that Two Legs brought Bernardo home. Bug-Eye will never forget you or what you've done, Two Legs.
Wow! +2 experience!
Oh, fuck you, you just fuck you, you just Frank! Yo! Frank, baby!
+2 experience! And everyone sits and stares at me and laughs.
Two Legs, listen to Bug-Eye.
Goodbye, Bug-Eye.
With the quest completed, an on-screen prompt pops up that literally says, "What are you doing with your life? Are you shitting me?" The writers are passive-aggressive towards player choice. I would have appreciated a
Got him!
more than just that dialogue that not only breaks the fourth wall, but in poor taste asks the player,
What are you doing with your life?
Granted, the quest did take me to some unique locations I otherwise wouldn't have found on my own, but I really felt slighted for trying my hand at side quests in the frontier. Once we finished up with Bug-Eye, the barkeep will point us in the direction of Carl, Junkflea's resident drunk.
Round the corner, on the right. Carl was an alcoholic and kept blowing all his caps on booze. He borrowed money from loan sharks that he later couldn't pay back.
Unfortunately, he's being held captive by some Legion slavers. You can either pay the slaver 2,000 caps to buy Carl, or with 100 speech, we can convince the slaver that Legate Valerius sent us to escort Carl directly to him.
Looking to buy, or are you here to sell? We got a 2-for-1 special on Tuesdays. Yeah, we got someone who goes by that name. You want him? You gotta pay up. That'll be 2,000 caps up front. No haggling.
The slaver is skeptical, but he says okay anyway. Kind of a nonsensical response, but because it requires 100 speech, I guess it makes sense.
Oh, fuck yeah, Carl's a goddamn animal. Look at this dude. He's ready to party.
What? What's going on?
You're my slave now.
With
Carl in our possession, we can ask him about the power cores.
The Enclave kicked me out. They scrambled my brains. Can't recall anything clearly anymore. Unless I keep myself clinically drunk. Unless you have something strong for me to drink like whiskey, vodka, or scotch.
Carl is an absolute madman. He's basically the Frontier's Rick Sanchez. He won't tell us anything naturally. He says the Enclave scrambled his brains, so we've got to feed him booze to get him talking.
Got a good
I like
buzz
fuck with
going
Carl, me
on
too.
now. What was it you wanted to ask me again? Yes. That's a plasma power core. They usually glow green, but that one's empty.
After each piece of information he spills, he asks for some more alcohol. After giving him 3 whole bottles of liquor, he reveals that one power core is in the Hunter's Lodge, the other is being held by a cult of ghouls known as the Church of Eternal Life.
Carl, knock him back. I was able to sneak back into one of their secret bases, Area 69, and steal 2 of their power cores.
Oh man.
And then flew out
He's
on a
losing
jetpack. It was pretty epic. I tells you.
If I give him too much alcohol, he's gonna pass out.
Threw up my
After getting some of this information out of Carl, he asks us if we want more information on the Enclave. In doing so, he says that the Frontier Enclave have changed. They're not about rebuilding America anymore. The Enclave want to wipe the slate clean and start over. I was interested in learning more, but
only this time, he'll control how life on Earth evolves.
Carl. Oh!
At this point, Carl suddenly barfed all over the floor, which made me both laugh and gag at the same time from how well done the animation is. On the way out of Junkfleet, Cypher and some Legionnaires are blocking your exit, and they jump you for good measure.
Really is like Portland.
There he is! That's the courier!
I was glad we got to kill him. Cypher and Wei objectively have the most unlikable designs and voice acting in any Fallout game. The lottery guy back in Nipton had the same look and was ugly for sure, but at least Sasuke's voice actor did his writing justice.
There!
Couldn't you just drink it like booze?
Now that Carl has given us the whereabouts of the power cores, I chose to head out to the Hunter's Lodge first. The lodge itself is well decorated with some taxidermic models of legendary creatures splayed out in the foyer. The creature on the right is a yeti, the other looks like some sort of demon. The T-posing of the models might be a little jarring, but the remains on display are representative of a Hunter's Lodge. After taking in the sights, we are greeted by Alexander Warren, a supreme gentleman who asks us what brings us to his lodge.
I see we have a new visitor. Welcome, guest. Welcome to the Hunter's Lodge. I am Alexander Warren. What brings you here? Are you just here to tour? Or are you looking to join?
I'm looking to join, ma'am.
His voice acting fits the role, and he definitely had a pimp-ass suit I wanted to wear, so I give the developers credit for designing a cool-looking lodge owner. Warren extends the courier an invitation to join the Hunter's Lodge. I didn't really feel like diverting for another side quest, so I declined the invitation, and I asked Alexander about the power core.
Ah, yes. A rather unique item I had to have in my collection. I'm guessing you've taken an interest in it yourself? I will part with it for no less than 10,000 caps.
10K?
He says the price is no less than 10,000 caps. The only options available are to pay or say, I'll pass. No speech options, no barter checks are available to negotiate with Warren. So, I popped a stealth boy, used my 100 lockpick skill to open up the case, and I grabbed the power core. You might have been able to get the power core's price cheaper by joining the lodge perhaps, but I was not particularly interested at the time, so I just nabbed it. I think the paywall and skill wall for finding the power core is a little steep, especially for a player who might have surrendered their gear at the start of the frontier, or someone who started the playthrough at a lower level. What happens if you didn't have enough caps? What happens if you didn't have 100 lockpick? What, do a bunch of side quests until you put all of your skill points into lockpick, find a stealth boy and steal it, sell all your gear and items for 10,000 caps, buy the key, then pickpocket your caps off of Alexander, get 100 lockpick, break into the case and kill everyone in the lodge? I mean, if I was this kind of player, I would just console command unlock the case and grab the damn thing. I used to be the I won't cheat or resort to hacks or looking things up type of gamer, but that mindset does not help us get any closer to the power cores. To any players that think this way, I do apologize in advance, and I regret to inform you that you may or may not have to cheat or steal to progress further into the story. To find the second power core, we have to venture into a nuclear impact crater. The perimeter of the crater is infested by new ghoul humanoid enemies named Wendigo. On average, each Wendigo has about 3,500 HP, and the most efficient way to kill a Wendigo is to target a singular limb and unload whatever high damage dealing weapon you have. Melee weapons will work too, but leave you vulnerable to the high damage the Wendigos deal at close range. These are similar to the hunters in the Sierra Madre DLC, but instead of wearing the Tarkov gas mask gear, the Wendigo have a feral ghoul paint job. I found that the combat shotgun is pretty effective in taking out the Wendigo quickly. Body shots do minimal damage, and to kill them in this fashion would take tons of ammo. The Wendigo use hand-to-hand combat, but do heavy damage and can overwhelm the player easily. Wendigo typically resort to swift bum rush haymaker attacks that can lead to the player being crippled, which obstructs your movement even more. In fighting many Wendigo, I had to use tons of stim packs to maintain my limb condition. I think that the Wendigo are a nod to Dead Space necromorphs, where the only way to defeat them is to cut off their limbs. But to a player who has never played Dead Space or the Sierra Madre DLC, I feel like these enemies would be very frustrating to deal with. Aesthetically, the impact crater looks pretty cool. The murky green lighting filter, the frequent lightning strikes, and loud noises add an eerie horror game feel to the difficult encounter of the Wendigo. The descent into the impact crater is lined with green Nuka-Cola bottles to inform the player of what pathway to take. This is a nice design touch. After fending off the Wendigo and reaching the crater bunker's interior, we are greeted by a new super mutant behemoth-style enemy called an Eternal Life Holy Guardian. Guardians are about as difficult as a single Wendigo. It took about 8 combat shotgun shells to kill one. I'm not asking for a complete difficulty overhaul, but if the Guardian is supposed to be a mini-boss and Wendigos are normal enemies, I would perhaps maybe tone down the Wendigo's health for power scaling sake. The Eternal Life Sanctuary is about what you would expect. They're basically the children of Adam in Fallout 3 if they had adequate funding. The crater's center has a nuclear warhead surrounded by many ghouls, feral and humanoid alike, so the player is constantly being irradiated. The Dead Space nod seemed 100% confirmed at this point, as the ghouls were preaching about eternal life.
This is like a Dead Space kind of knockoff reference.
Similar to the way the church worshipped the marker in Dead Space. In speaking with the priest, we learned that we are what is called an unholy
visitor.
one.
And you're an unholy one? This is very unusual to have an unholy guest arrive in our church.
Obviously, because we haven't been ghoulified yet. The priest's voice acting has a raspy, deep bass quality to it that feels good on the ears.
No unholy has ever survived the holy guardians of the church. Perhaps faith has brought you here, Unholy One.
He informs the player that no Unholy One has ever survived a Holy Guardian before, implying that any outsider must defeat a Holy Guardian to gain entrance to the Impact Crater. I have never been a fan of survive this death ambush and you can talk to this faction design choice in Bethesda games. This felt like the boomers all over again. Surviving a relentless barrage of artillery bombings or fighting off 30 zombies and a behemoth just to talk to a small faction with minimal rewards is pretty frustrating, and this makes me dislike these factions instantly. I asked the priest about the core, but he says that the core is off limits to the Unholy.
We may have something of the likes in our stockpile, but it is strictly off limits to Unholies.
I'm unsure if we would have to ghoulify the player to get to the core naturally, but I didn't feel like going through some radiation initiation questline and sacrifice our character's good looks just to get a power core. So I popped a stealth boy again, opened a very hard locked door, grabbed the core, and left the crater. With both power cores in hand, we returned to Blackthorn back at the airstrip. Before reaching the hangar, we can talk to Sarah Rosen, an NCR soldier working a terminal.
You down here in the gutter? Though, I can't say I mind the company. First name's Sarah, last name's Rosin. I've been having trouble getting messages to our outposts in the region, specifically NCR Radio, Outpost Henderson, and the Vanguard Outpost.
Her voice acting is pretty awful. The microphone quality sounded like it was recorded directly from Discord, and her performance pales in comparison to the other main characters. She can give you a quest to fix a radio station or something, but I skipped this completely.
300 cap.
300 caps? Man, they're really stingy on the rewards.
Upon reaching the floor of the hangar, we see that Blackthorn has gathered a large number of exile soldiers for a meeting. The general congratulates us in our efforts to retrieve the power cores, and informs the player he has recruited a team to assist us in our mission to reach the Archimedes 2.
Courier, I'm hoping you were successful in your search for the power cores.
I have the cores.
Excellent, and just in time.
Each member has been hand-picked with special skills and experience to cover all aspects of a covert mission. Blackthorn then briefs us on each member.
Give me a briefing on the team.
Very well.
The team leader is Officer Parks.
Distinguished leader. Knows how to hold a team together and always puts his comrades before himself. He'll be helping you complete the mission.
Badger is the team's designated marksman.
Skilled soldier, but cocky. He's always willing to do what's necessary and should prove to be a reliable soldier.
Mustang, a seasoned veteran who fought in the Brotherhood of Steel War, provides fire support.
And anyone in the frontier. He should be able to provide the support needed when in a tight situation.
Rogue is the team's computer expert and skilled hacker for decrypting any advanced technology found aboard the Archimedes space station.
And by turning their weapons against them.
Tuner is the communications expert who is tasked with establishing communication and dispatching potential reinforcements. Siren, the field medic who helped complete the operation to resuscitate the courier in Chapter 1, will be tending to any injuries during the mission.
Freak Show. Ghoul.
Freak Show? I'm down to kick it with Freak Show.
Freak Show, one of my personal favorites, is a ghoul resistant to radiation who will help back up the team in any firefights.
Watchman and Caboose
are the team's two engineers tasked with analyzing Enclave weapons found on the Archimedes. The team's two pilots are Tiger and Roach, who will operate the Vertishuttles to and from the space station. I liked this team introduction, and this was one piece of writing I felt was done right. It revived the hype back up for the Enclave mission in space I was excited for. Once Blackthorn delivers his usual long-winded rallying speech, we begin prepping to board the Vertishuttles. Remember, if you get tired of Blackthorn's speeches, you can resize him to your liking using the set scale console command. Blackthorn gives us each a spacesuit to prevent the team from suffocating while out in space. Some crew members bring some concerns to Blackthorn's attention, one being that the Enclave might see our Vertishuttles coming. To quell these objections, Way informs the team that the Enclave have been requesting space shuttles to evacuate the Archimedes. This made me suspect that something more sinister might be happening aboard the Archimedes, something bigger than just the Enclave.
Suit up and prepare for takeoff.
Suit up and prepare for takeoff.
Once the briefing is over, a cheeseball edgy slow-mo walking sequence is shown, ripped straight out of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah,
I didn't mind this too much, but I'm sure this gave lots of other people an eye roller too. The camera zooms out to show the Vertishuttles on the airstrip, and once the heroic soundtrack begins to ramp up, the Vertishuttles begin launching out into orbit. The engine effects and cloudy skyscape were impressive to look at, I must admit. With the Vertishuttles finally out into orbit, Chapter 2 is concluded, and on-screen text displays that the player has finally reached Chapter 3. All in all, Chapter 2 started out with lots of excitement and action, but then fizzled out for the latter half. The tank assault, the brief buggy driving mission, and the Metal Gear Solid stealth sequence were super fun and engaging, but once the rising action ramped up to near climax, I was left unsatisfied when I was tasked with doing chore side missions. Junk Fleet had some cool aesthetic and side quests and had a culture all of its own. However, once Junk Fleet's missions ended, we were given the dirty work of hunting down the power cores. The glaring overall problem with the hunt down the power cores sequences is that of momentum. The developers decided to start off strong with the Metal Gear Enclave stealth mission, then dangle Enclave Death Ray space station in front of me before giving the player an endless fetch quest with a 2-cap passive-aggressive reward, so any and all side missions seemed trivial and a waste of time. After all, Fallout is a game of freedom and exploration. The times that the Frontier gave the player opportunity to explore felt unpolished and almost insulting to the player's intelligence and freedom. My honest opinion, fuck both of these power core side quests. Maybe there are some cool rewards and lore for completing these quests, but the sheer difficulty wall, asking us to become a ghoul just to do some NCR dirty work, deterred me from finding out more about these factions. They're just poorly written. There was a real opportunity here to make the Eternal Life Church more intriguing, but the difficulty wall and self-sacrifice just to get a quest item made this faction seem nothing more than an inconvenience. The same thing goes for the Hunter's Lodge. 10,000 caps? Become a ghoul and or fight off nightmare ghoul behemoths? No thanks. Both of these locations were designed with an air of importance, but the developers wrote them in such a way like they wanted to cuck the player into making big sacrifices just to get the NCR exiles what they want. Both the Impact Crater and Hunter's Lodge are designed to have characters that prevent you from completing your objective easily, and their requests are unreasonable. Now, if Warren or the Priest gave the courier a quest to complete, and in return they would give the player the power cores, I would totally be on board. Neither Warren or the Priest are forthcoming with information. One asks for shit tons of money, the other says we are unholy and must cleanse ourselves. On top of this, neither NPC explains why these cores have meaning to them. Warren is just an eccentric lodge owner fat cat, the other a religious fanatic. You can't ask the NPCs why the price is so high, or why the cores are off limits. Both of these characters need a heavy rewrite, otherwise players will just end up killing an entire faction or resorting to workarounds to avoid dealing with these NPCs altogether. Chapter 2 relies heavily on the writing, and when the writing isn't executed effectively, it becomes hard to ignore the many plot holes and lack of player agency. So why did the Enclave have vertishuttles with no power cores in them? It would have made more sense that Dr. Voss or the androids shot out the engines to the vertishuttles to damage the cores. Thus, the only way to fly them would be to replace the power cores. This might not even be a huge plot hole if the power core missions weren't so tedious and aggravating. Rancor is a great character, however the inability to raise questions when Rancor does Rancor things is frustrating. Blackthorn comes off as a senile old leader, and with no freedom to question his blind faith in the courier, or no explanation given as to why the courier is central to any and all missions given by Blackthorn, the general comes off as no better than Kimball. The script constantly throws Blackthorn's blatant hypocrisy in the player's face, and almost insults the player in a weird, meta, almost passive-aggressive manner. Gray is the one character who is level-headed enough to bring these blaring problems to the courier's attention, however it feels as if the script strong-arms the player into being complicit in the writing shortcomings, especially because the developers dangled Enclave in space carrots ahead of the player. Who wouldn't be excited for Fallout in space? Often the side quests patronize the player for exploring beyond the scope of the main quest line. Bug-Eye's mission should be gutted altogether. It was a colossal waste of time, and even the troll on-screen prompt could have been done better with some meme sound quip or something for better comedic effect. The humor in this mod is pretty tone-deaf and ends up coming off as condescending and insulting to a player that gives the mod the benefit of the doubt. I think if the developers restructured Chapter 2 in a more coherent and logical way, and gave the momentum some consistency, it would have been a more exciting follow-up to Chapter 1. Perhaps if Chapter 2's plot bullet points went Tank Mission, Enclave Death Laser, Enclave Ambush, NCR wins fight against Enclave, but Enclave disables power cores and retreats, player then sneaks into Enclave base with Rancor to retrieve power cores, then Blackthorn recruits team to go to space, the momentum would be carried effectively and leave the player satisfied and wanting more. I still stand by my belief that the technical marvel of the Frontier is something to behold. However, the writing is messy and seems amateur at best. With some restructuring, the Frontier could be something fantastic, but the Frontier relies heavily on poorly executed writing and lack of player freedom. With heavy influences from Call of Duty, Dead Space, and Wolfenstein, the lack of originality becomes apparent after a while. I don't dislike the Call of Duty or Dead Space combat, but because these references are so prevalent throughout the Frontier, I can't in good faith ignore the Frontier's use of other IP's stories to fill the mod's playtime. Hopefully in Chapter 3, we will see a resurgence of the high-octane action and better writing shown in Chapter 1. So, what did you guys think of this critique? I noticed that Chapter 1 got some flack for going against the narrative. However, I am still determined to complete this series on the Frontier. If you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more Fallout and Critique content. If you liked or disliked it for any particular reason, please let me know in the comment section below. Writing this script for this particular chapter was tough, but still fun, and I hope you had fun too. You can follow me at twitch.tv/KikoRay for daily streams. I also have a Twitter with the same name, twitter.com/KikoRay for daily clickbait and announcements. I want to thank you all for watching and all of your lovely comments, and I hope to see you all in the next video.